There is a tree that was colonial America's most valuable export for decades, second only to tobacco, a tree that indigenous peoples used safely for thousands of years as medicine, food, and survival tool, a tree whose roots were so valuable that sea captains sailed from Bristol, England, with a single mission: to find it and bring it home. In 1960, the FDA made it illegal, not because it had been proven dangerous to humans, but because one aromatic compound in its roots threatened to destabilize a system worth billions. This is sassafras, the tree that fed colonial America, flavored every child's summer, and then vanished from every kitchen in a single generation. In the next 10 minutes, you will not just learn how sassafras shaped 400 years of American culture. You will understand why your grandmother's spring tonic was suddenly declared a criminal substance, why a tree growing wild across more than 30 U.S. states is barely known today, and why nutmeg, black pepper, and star anise, all containing the same compound as sassafras, sit completely untouched on your spice rack right now. Once you understand how this happened, you will never walk past a plant in your garden without asking who decided you should not know about it. The archive opens somewhere in eastern North America, around 8000 BCE. Long before European ships reached American shores, sassafras grew from Maine to Florida, from the Atlantic coast all the way to eastern Texas. Dozens of indigenous nations knew it by different names: the Choctaw, the Cherokee, the Timucua of Florida. They all used it, and they revered it. European botanists linked it to the Latin saxifraga, stonebreaker, and healers on both sides of the Atlantic began reaching for its roots to treat kidney complaints, among many other ailments. Every part of the tree held a purpose. Roots were brewed into tea for fevers and colds. Leaves were crushed into poultices for wounds, sprains, and insect bites. The bark was chewed for dental health, as natural oils killing bacteria and freshening breath, centuries before toothpaste was ever invented. The Choctaw discovered something else entirely. When dried leaves were ground into a fine powder, they became the perfect thickener for soups and stews. That powder, called filet, would later define Louisiana Creole gumbo, a dish that literally would not exist without indigenous sassafras knowledge. Yet, so when English settlers arrived at Roanoke in 1585 and faced supply shortages, expedition naturalist Thomas Harriot documented sassafras among the most valued plants they encountered, used by Native Americans for both medicine and trade. By the early 1600s, a syphilis epidemic was sweeping through Europe. Medicine had no answer, and then came reports from the New World of a tree whose roots could purify blood, reduce fever, and ease pain. Europe was prepared to pay anything. Sassafras bark sold for its weight in gold. By 1602, the first commercial shipments were already crossing the Atlantic. In 1603, Captain Martin Pring set sail, backed by Bristol merchants departing from Milford Haven, with one single objective: find sassafras. He returned a wealthy man. For the following decades, but sassafras was colonial America's second largest export after tobacco. Then the problem revealed itself. Harvesting the bark killed the tree. By 1626, just 24 years after that first commercial shipment, colonists could no longer meet their export quotas. They had stripped the accessible forests nearly bare. Sassafras does not surrender easily. The stumps sent up new shoots. Seeds waited in the soil. And by the 1840s, American entrepreneurs had discovered something brilliant. Sassafras roots could be turned into a sweet, fizzy drink that tasted like childhood itself. Root beer was born. By 1900, sassafras had woven itself into the fabric of American life. In Philadelphia pharmacist Charles Hires built a commercial empire from it, debuting his Hires root beer formula at the 1876 Centennial Exposition and marketing it as a healthy temperance alternative to alcohol. Every corner store sold root beer. Every grandmother brewed sassafras tea as a spring tonic. Every Southern cook kept filet powder in the pantry for gumbo. It was as American as apple pie. And then, within a single generation, every trace of it vanished. If you want to understand exactly how that was made possible, subscribe right now and hit the bell. What comes next is something 99% of gardeners have never been told. In 1960, the FDA made its announcement. Safrole, the aromatic compound giving sassafras its unmistakable flavor, caused liver cancer in laboratory rats. The evidence looked damning. Yes, the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, Section 189.180, declared it a poisonous and deleterious substance. Within months, safrole was banned from all commercially produced foods and drugs. Root beer manufacturers scrambled. They switched to artificial sassafras flavoring built from petroleum derivatives. Herbalists stopped recommending it. Filet powder disappeared from shelves or was quietly reformulated. Within one generation, most Americans forgot sassafras had ever existed. Here is what the FDA did not advertise. The rats in those studies had been given safrole at doses comprising up to 1% of their total daily diet, sustained over months and years. Amounts that no person would ever come close to consuming through traditional use of sassafras tea or filet powder. And here's the comparison no regulator mentioned. Sassafras oil is the most concentrated natural source of safrole on the planet. But safrole also appears in nutmeg, black pepper, and star anise. Not one of those was banned. You can buy all of them today at any grocery store without a second thought. The difference is not chemistry, it is concentration and control. Why sassafras and nothing else? Suddenly everything lines up. This was never really about cancer. Sassafras root tea was used for generations as a blood purifier and spring tonic. Modern analysis confirms its compounds carry genuine anti-inflammatory properties. That is not folklore, that is chemistry. The leaves contain mucilage, the same soothing substance found in slippery elm and marshmallow root. This explains why indigenous healers used it for digestive problems, and why chewing the bark eased sore throats long before over-the-counter remedies existed. Filet powder is not simply a thickener. Dried sassafras leaves carry nutritional value beyond flavoring alone. When West African enslaved people in Louisiana merged their culinary traditions with Native American and European influences, filet became the soul of Creole gumbo. That dish exists only because indigenous sassafras knowledge survived. And then there's the part almost nobody talks about. Preliminary laboratory studies suggest that safrole in small doses may carry protective effects against certain cancer cells in vitro, not cause them. Those early findings received no promotion from regulatory agencies. Research requires approval. Approval requires removing the drug precursor stigma, and removing that stigma threatens enforcement budgets worth billions of dollars. By the 1970s, something else had emerged, something the FDA had not said out loud in 1960. Safrole is not just an aromatic oil, it is a chemical precursor. Underground chemists had figured out that safrole could be converted into MDA and MDMA, the drugs known as ecstasy. The DEA faced a serious problem. Sassafras trees grew wild across more than 30 states in the eastern United States. And banning the tree was impossible. But they could make safrole a List 1 chemical, the strictest category, reserved for substances used in manufacturing a controlled substance. In 2015, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police raided a clandestine laboratory and seized 1,500 kilograms of sassafras oil. Reports stated it was sufficient to produce 4.2 million MDMA tablets. Think carefully about what this means. A tree that Native Americans used safely for thousands of years became classified as a drug precursor, not because of any danger in its traditional use, because it could be weaponized by people with chemistry equipment. What cannot be patented will not be promoted. What cannot be controlled will be banned. The 1960 FDA decision was not purely a risk assessment. It was also about control over a freely accessible natural compound that no corporation could own and no agency could regulate. In a world built on consumption, knowing how to grow and use your own plants is the ultimate act of self-reliance. That is precisely what makes it inconvenient. Sassafras trees still grow wild across more than 30 U.S. states today. Walk through any deciduous forest from Maine to Texas, and you will find them, recognized instantly by their 3 distinct leaf shapes: oval, mitten-shaped, and 3-lobed. In autumn, they turn brilliant yellow, burgundy, and orange. The trees do not care about FDA classifications. They do not recognize DEA designations. They simply grow. Now, safrole-free sassafras extract was quietly re-legalized as a dietary supplement in 1994. But the knowledge of how to use the whole plant had already been lost across an entire generation. Your great-grandmother knew how to brew sassafras tea. Your grandmother may still remember the taste of real root beer. You probably cannot even recognize the tree by sight. One generation. That is all it takes to erase 10,000 years. Go outside, find the three-lobed leaf. It is already growing there. Nature needs no permission. It simply grows. The question is whether you are still paying attention.